After a goal which a lot of us hate, Taranto. And
high contact.
Andrews is down and he has not moved. He has not moved, Harris Andrews.
Yeah, Harris's concussion was a big blow. It was a big blow in a sense in that game because at the point that he got hurt, I think we might have been in front. It's 2-1. It's a pretty tight sort of a game. He goes off the ground. Then I think Darcy Gardner gets injured and he's out of the game for about 20 minutes. So our back line is reasonably disorganised for that period of time. We had to make some changes, and in that period I think GWS might have kicked 4 goals and got a lead by about 3.5 goals, and that was pretty much the margin they won by. It took us a little while to settle. So just on the back of that, purely that game, the loss of Harris was huge. We'll never know whether we could have got close or beaten them that night, but I have a sense that we may have. And we did miss him for the next 4 to 5 weeks, albeit we're able to win 3 games in a row in that period, which is great that we're able to, that Josh Walker was able to go down back and pretty much take up Harris's role and do a really good job with it. But a guy like Harris is hard to replace. He made the top 40 for All-Australian this year, and I'll feel again if he hadn't missed those 5 games, he may well have been in that All-Australian side. So that's how far he's come as a player. It's a great credit to him as a 21-year-old. Whilst his first game back against Hawkins down at Geelong was a bit of a tough initiation back into the side, he was back into his previous form by the end of the year. Yeah, the 3 wins sort of came from nowhere. I mean, when I looked at the draw, I thought, gee, you know, Fremantle over there, pretty tough. Carlton up here, well, that was a winnable for us because they're a bit like us, they're a developing team. And then Hawthorn down at Launceston, well, the statistics would say that's next to impossible. So I didn't think going into that patch of games that we'd be able to win all 3. We got a tremendous amount of confidence from the victory in Perth. That was an amazing performance from the start to the end. We never let up. The boys had a real focus on brotherhood going into that game, which is part of our trademark. And we knew that we'd have to display plenty of that because, you know, playing over there in a hostile environment where there's 40,000 people and most of them are dressed in purple following the one team, you need to be a pretty strong unit. So that was our focus going in, and that carried us through beautifully. We had a really even team contribution that day and came away so excited with the win because it's been such a long time, I think, since we'd actually won over there. Couldn't exactly tell you when, but I know it was a long time. And then Carlton up here. And that was still a bit of a challenge because we had only had 6-day tournaments. There's that long flight back from Perth and we had to try and make sure we're ready to go. And we were, and we started a little bit sluggishly, but then we started playing some great footy and I think won by a big margin in the end. And then, yeah, travelled to Launceston. You know, all week we talked about the key to playing the Hawks in Launceston is to be mentally tough, and a bit like the time in Perth, we had to have strong brotherhood. And I couldn't believe how tough we were that day. It wasn't an easy game. It hung in the balance till halfway through the last quarter, but our guys kept finding, and the look on their faces and the joy that they had when they won that game, particularly in the rooms afterwards singing the song, was something to behold. And I think it made them feel like, oh, this is pretty good, this winning stuff, you know. We like this. We're not used to it, but we like it. And it gave them a taste of hopefully of what's to come in the future. You know, we tried desperately to make it 4 in a row the following week against Adelaide and went down by less than a goal. So, you know, our form was so strong in that month and really has been since the bye. You know, we put in some great performances against some pretty good teams, but yeah, that 3 weeks hopefully builds that belief thing. You know, you get a little bit of confidence from your preparation that you do and all the hard work that you put in, but the icing on the cake is when the belief comes. And we just got a little bit of that in those 3 weeks, and I think from that day forward, every time we went out to play, we believed that we could win. We didn't always, but I think for those who watched us, they could see that we thought that, and that's a huge change in the mindset of this footy club.
Around the body here.
Rain up, wasting no time. He wants to be the match winner, but he's missed it. He's held it out to the right.
Yeah, the North Melbourne game, We've been beaten pretty comprehensively by North Melbourne for a number of years in a row, and we really wanted to, you know, win, lose or draw, we wanted to come off the ground with them having a bit more respect for us than perhaps they have had in the past. So we did achieve that out of that game, going down by a pretty narrow margin. The end was a bit of a pity in a way, but also a great learning experience, not just for Cam Rayner, but for everyone in the team, about the sort of composure required to win those close games. I had no problem with Cam's kick selection. He'd done one of those kicks the week before down at Geelong that sailed straight through the middle. The issue with it was more that he just didn't take time and run the clock down. So he, you know, being young and inexperienced, he rushed himself a little bit and, you know, took the kick too soon and missed as well. So, you know, we were all disappointed. He was none more so than him. You know, he had tears in his eyes coming off the ground, but what we all know is that he's going to be a great player for us and he's going to learn from that experience. And, you know, by the Monday, you know, he put the bit of vision up and talked his way through it and explained what he'd do differently next time if he had the opportunity. And I thought that was great, showed great maturity by him. He moved on pretty quickly and, you know, he's going to be a great player for us. So, as disappointing as it was to lose that game, in the bigger picture and scheme of things, it's minor. Yeah, I've been really impressed with him. I mean, you know, when you're the #1 draft pick, there comes a bit of focus and attention with that. Everyone's, you know, watching. Is he going to be any good? Is he what we thought we were going to be? And he plays mostly as a forward, and it's a pretty difficult spot to play in footy now because opposition teams defend so well and get so many numbers back. It's hard to find space. But what he does is he wins contested ball, he wins his own ball, he's not relying on others to get it to him. He's taken some spectacular marks, he's kicked some great crumbing goals. He does a lot of assists and creates goals for others. When he gets his chance on ball in the midfield, he imposes himself around the contests. You know, he's got some work to do on his running fitness and conditioning, but that will come the longer he spends time with us. But I just love his attitude. He's just never beaten. He always thinks he can, you know, beat the bloke he's playing on. He's physically tough. He doesn't take a backward step. He loves his club, so couldn't be happier to have him here. Yeah, Zach's last 2 games were full of great promise, and his start was as well. He got a little bit tired, and I don't know, sometimes when you're a young player it's not a bad thing to go back to reserves and have to earn your way back into the team, and he certainly had to do that over a 6-week period. When he got back in, he was a little bit quiet early in the Gold Coast game, but then we moved him to halfback because we got a couple of injuries, and I think Witho hurt his hamstring, and Zach went to halfback, and we saw this, ooh, wow, this boy can play halfback. He gave us some real run and drive and energy, and you know, took ground off the opposition really quickly, so we were excited by that. And then the last game was probably his best game. He had 20 touches, a few tackles, kicked a couple of goals, assisted in a few goals, sort of playing forward and back. And so he finished the season on a really high note. His ability to explode from congestion is exhilarating, I reckon. When people watch us play, they see this bloke shoot out at 100 miles an hour and it's him. That's only going to happen more and more often, you would think, as he goes through his career. So he would have got a lot of confidence out of his first year, and hopefully that motivates him to do a great pre-season and come back bigger and better next year. Yeah, the Clark Kent sort of Superman look-alike, you know, the boy with the glasses on during the week. He looks like a budding lawyer rather than the budding AFL footballer. But no, his last 4 games were great. I mean, he didn't get a huge number of stats, but everything he did was really good quality, and he was so clean with his ball handling, and he tackled really strongly, and he won contested ball, and he would have got, I think, a fair bit of learning and a fair bit of belief out of those last 4 games, and he goes into the pre-season knowing that he's good enough to play at the level, which is a pretty important thing to achieve in your first year. And I think that, you know, Cam Rayner, Zach Bailey and Stas have all come away with that, so that bodes well for next year. But no, excited by what he can bring. Yes, the Gold Coast Suns game in round 22, an interesting build-up. You know, we spend all week trying not to sort of aggravate each other and give each other any reason or motivation to win. And Nick Robertson, you know, I don't think he actually meant it to happen the way that it did, because he's a good man, Nick. But you know, he gave Gold Coast plenty of ammunition for that final game against them by saying what he said, which is, uncharacteristic of him and not how we want to be represented as a club, but nevertheless it made for a more interesting game, I suppose. And you know, our biggest hope was that we could come off the ground winners so that Nick didn't have to cop it from the opposition as we walked off the ground. And fortunately we got up by a small margin. We didn't help ourselves that night though. We kicked 10 goals, 18 I think, which is pretty poor kicking for goal. And a lot of those shots were gettable. So we made it hard for ourselves. We had like 60 inside 50s to their 48. So a lot of the KPIs for that game were stacked in our favour. But the margin on the scoreboard didn't necessarily reflect that, and we had to fight hard to win. In fact, we got behind and had to find a way to get there, which is the pleasing part about it. All our other wins, pretty much we sort of got out in front and stayed out in front, whereas with this one we got out in front, got behind and fought back. So good for the group that they were able to do that, and a relief for us all that we're able to get the win. Yeah, reflect on this year as a year of improvement and growth, but also a year of frustration that we didn't win more of those close games. But I know that will stand us in good stead. We've got to win more games next year than we did this year. Got to continue to improve. You know, we want to start to challenge for finals. And that's not just the coach talking, that's the players talking. We've had a good conversation about that, and they're going to all be disappointed next year if we don't make those strides. So, you know, fingers crossed for injuries and all those sorts of things, because they can affect performance. But by and large, if everything goes to plan, you know, we should improve significantly again next year on what we've been able to do this year.